Welcome, everyone, to the L7C Podcast NBA Finals Edition. You have in here with our basketball aficionado, Evan Debo. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good. Emergency podcast of sorts to try to get in another talking point and series of discussion with the Lakers rolling, and we didn't get on here quick, the series potentially could be over.
That's true, as Evan alluded to. The series currently right now is 2-0 in favor of the Lakers, and Game 3 is a Sunday night at, is it still 7? Is it 9 o'clock, or are they playing at 7:30 tonight?
They're playing early. They're going to play about 7:30 Eastern time, so about 45 minutes from when we're taping this now. So
Game 3 is tonight. Potentially the Lakers can go up a commanding 3-0 lead. And since it's 2-0, we're just hopping on to talk about what we're seeing with the halfway point of the finals. If we think the Heat are going to get a game, these crazy start times for the finals, the scheduling of the finals, and some coaching news that happened from our last episode. So first I want to talk about the finals. Currently the Lakers are up 2-0. The Heat got hit with the injury bug with Gordon and Bam being out. Evan, do you see any hope for Miami to at least get a game this series?
I mean, this team is super scrappy. I mean, you alluded to before the series started on the last podcast on our preview that, they're a team that, if they're going to have any success to steal a game, it's going to have to be, mudding up basketball, making it tough, leaving an imprint really on the series, and just kind of a dysfunctional defensive driven fashion. I don't want to say it's a complete foregone conclusion that they won't win a single game out of the next two, but teams have let their foot off the gas pedal before, and I think we were looking at a sweep or a gentleman's sweep going into this, and I think it's possible. But as you alluded to, I mean, nobody saw the injury bug coming to two of the top three players on Miami, and Goran Dragic, and then it's second game in a row too for who's got Goran with the plantar fasciitis or plantar tear of the foot ligament there, and then Bam now second straight game with a neck after leaving early in the third quarter of game one. So this will be his second game that he's fully missed with as we head into game 3 tonight. It's just tough to see. I mean, from the outside looking in, we were so invested in the Cavs' first run through with Golden State. They were able to make it to 6 with Kelly Olynyk ripping Kevin Love's shoulder out, Kyrie Irving's knee busting down, and that series in game 1 to start that overtime period. This is a different perspective for me as somebody watching basketball to see when you've got such a lopsided position like this. Nobody wants to see it. Everybody wants to be at full strength. I think the fans want to be at full strength. Obviously Miami does, but I think the Lakers want to make sure there's no asterisk on this. And, this is really a situation people were worried about heading into the bubble of, things happen and everything else. And, will people look at this as an illegitimate title of sorts in a really weird year like you do in previous lockout seasons too? I mean, it's really tough to see Bam and Goran out right now, but it's looking like it may well go sweep territory. The Lakers can string together 8 solid quarters here in the next 2 games.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like if the Heat don't win tonight, then this is going to be a sweep, and the series will be over early in this week. And you already said it. It does stink that 2 out of their 3 best players got hurt. And I do feel bad for the Heat, obviously the most, but I also feel bad for the Lakers, more specifically LeBron. I mean, he's chasing the ghost in Chicago with presumably now his 4th title that's about to happen. People are going to look at this time and be like, well, 2 out of the Heat's 3 best players were hurt. You were in the bubble, all those things, and that asterisk that you just alluded to, which would really stink for him. And also, I personally don't know if he's even going to win Finals MVP this year, because what I'm seeing from Anthony Davis I think I would kind of lean voting for him because they can't stop him.
No, I mean through the first two games of any player on the court, Anthony Davis has been the best player in this finals. We talked about too of this being in the last pod about this being uncharted waters for him. He's never made it past a conference semis before. Obviously, this year making it to the conference finals and now the NBA finals. And he's showing up and he's a bad dude and he's advertised as we've known him to be as a regular season player, but he's just never had the platform before. It also helps having number 23 on your side too to help feed you the ball and everything else. But obviously losing Bam was huge, and now you're scrapping with you got Kelly Olynyk and Myers Leonard out there for stretches. They just can't hang with Anthony Davis.
No.
Too and then when you're on the Lakers and you stagger a second big in there too, I mean it's just you can do some high low stuff there with JaVale and Dwight for stretches with AD. But I mean that stretch Anthony Davis had in the third quarter of game 2 was some of the finest offensive basketball I've ever seen him play. I mean, he was scoring at will. At one point, he was, I think, 10 of 11 overall in the game heading into the third quarter. He was filling it up and he was attacking the basket. He had a little floater there baseline. He had a three in that stretch, and of course his elbow staple long twos were. He's getting. I mean, Jay Crowder was playing him, God love him, as best as he could on some of those elbow pull-ups. But I mean, when you're 7 foot already and you've got that ridiculous alien-like wingspan, by the time you release the top of your shot, I mean, there's just no way a guy, like Jay Crowder or Myers Leonard can contest truly a shot like that. I mean, that stretch in the third quarter was phenomenal, and that really kind of sealed the deal. I will give Miami credit. We're talking about can they steal a game? I saw a lot of hope they were able to get it down to 10 points or so. We were texting in the group chat a little bit about that with under 5.5 to go, and obviously the score made it look in game 2 ended up being a lot worse than what it was for stretches. I mean, they did lose by 10, but to be down your 2 top players and scrapping, they did not quit. It just clearly was an instance of a better talent. But yeah, AD has my vote through 2 games, and I don't feel like that hurts LeBron to an extent.
No.
But I think this again, LeBron's had some finals just taken out of his hands with some crazy injuries on one end, and then the Kevin Durant stacking on the other. But I mean, that kind of is what it is there. But he's been on the other end of the injury bug before too, and as we alluded, this kind of makes up for it. Again, if the Lakers can pick up 2 of the next 5 games, I mean, if it were to go out that long, this series is not going to go that long. But I expect more of the same in game 3 tonight, about another half hour or so.
Yeah, I think the best chance that he had to win was actually game 1, because I remember we were talking about it and tweeting about the game, how the Heat were really playing very well, but then turnovers and just bad decision making. Then the Lakers just went on a run and they couldn't recover from that. Then obviously the injuries happened. So we're definitely going to have to pay attention. As we said, game 3 is tonight, Sunday, time of recording. Hopefully, me personally, I would like the Heat to win just to extend basketball a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't want it to be over by Tuesday. That would just stink.
And we've got till like November 19th when we have the next draft action. I know the Cavs have been doing some, and some of the delete 8, Cavs included, Bulls, the teams that didn't get invited to the NBA bubble have been having their own little mini camps of sorts just to have some basketball competition, get in the weight room together, run some offensive and defensive sets and work out. I mean, I wish those things were aired. That'd be so nice, but you're exactly right. I'm not ready to give up basketball just yet. And if the draft's not till third week of November, I mean, that's a long ways away from anything basketball related too. So one quick note too. I mean, we've also seen, as much as we've seen success wise on the Lakers side of things, before maybe we prop up the Heat just a little bit, they've had some guys really, really struggle. I mean, really struggle. KCP, 4-14 shooting. Kuzma's almost become the next guy in the primetime series to be kind of the joke guy. If Paul Pierce was his own character in a movie where like, oh man, he's just flailing, Kuz is kind of getting to that spot too. It's I mean, it's really been the LeBron and AD show and not much else. Even Danny Green 1 for 8 in game 2. I mean, that's not Danny. Those aren't Danny Green numbers.
No, no, they're not. It's just that duo right now of LeBron and AD just been too good. And we talked about on the last episode about people ascending and descending in these top 10 NBA player rankings. AD's got to be near the top. Got to be near the top, around close to where his teammate 23 is at. Definitely in the top 5.
I do want to hit on. Rajon Rondo real quick.
Playoff Rondo.
Playoff Rondo. In this series, he's now passed Larry Bird for 6th on the all-time career playoff lists. He's done that in 3, so he's 5 assists ahead of Bird now, and he's also passed Steve Nash. So he's 6 ahead of Nash on the all-time list. Obviously, those guys are done, but he's done this in 3 less seasons than both those guys. Both those guys did 12 playoff tours of duty, versus this is Rajon's 9th tour. And I mean the turnover ratio in terms of games. I mean, so he's played far less games than anybody in the top 10 by any means. I mean, Magic has a healthy lead almost in just 83 games compared to Rajon. Moore has doubled his assist total. So I mean, like if you were to average it out, Rondo's great, but I mean nowhere near Magic, and Magic's Magic. But the turnovers only 327 in the 117 games he's played. Now that seems a lot. Obviously, it averages out to a little more than 3 a game. But when you look at the all-time list and you look at Jason Kidd that he's approaching on number 4, even LeBron, who's number 3rd all time. Just obviously he's played a lot more games. He's done a lot more playoff seasons. LeBron's turned the ball over 931 times to get to that number 3 ranking. I mean, Rajon has been about as efficient as it can be when the defenses are turned up a notch in the playoffs. People are active in the passing lanes, and I mean, think of the teams he's played over the years too. He's really been the best player on the Lakers for this entire run. I mean, and a guy who had hurt his hand early on in the bubble and wasn't there. And I mean, they've needed what they needed out of Rondo, out of the second ball handler too. And I mean, can you ever imagine Rajon shooting threes?
No,
as efficiently he's been doing it. I mean, that was a laughable joke. I mean, he was Eric Snow in Philadelphia bad in the early 2000s as a running mate to Allen Iverson. I mean, and LeBron for a couple of years there in Cleveland. I mean, he's bad, man. But I mean, he's a guy that, I mean, he shoots him flat-footed, but he's really perfecting. It's been amazing.
Yeah, that
Here's to the Heat, obviously losing their top 2 guys. What have you seen? What have you seen out of? Yeah, touch base on Rondo, and then what have you seen of promise despite the tough circumstances from the Heat so far?
Just a small thing on Rondo. It's just amazing the fact that he was always seen as the 4th wheel, obviously, when he was with the Big 3 in Boston. But there were games with Boston he would take over, especially with the rivalry that they had with LeBron's Heat back in the day. I don't know which game it was specifically. I think it was the game 2 of their last encounter where he had like a triple-double and he was hitting shots all over. And he's just one of those players that once he enters the postseason, he is a completely different player, both efficiently and just everything wise. So I think if the Lakers win this second title, he has 2 titles under his belt, and like you said, where he's at on the all-time rankings in the playoffs, he's potentially going to be a Hall of Famer.
Oh yes, absolutely.
So that's something which I would think is crazy, thinking about the Big 3 Boston days and saying Rajon Rondo is going to be a Hall of Famer. No way. And now fast forward, it's just like, yeah, I think he's going to be in the Hall of Fame when his career is all said and done. And then you said to touch on the Heat. I mean, they're just they're just resilient. Like when I'm watching them play and I'm seeing them they can't guard AD, but they're still trying. They're doing everything they can. They're running real basketball plays to get open shots for their guys because they're less talented than the Lakers. And it's unfortunate, but I love seeing them play. I hope in the offseason they can add a couple more pieces so that they can contend for a couple more years. I'm not going to write them off just yet. If they come out flat in game 3 and they're down by 30 at halftime, then the series is going to be over in 4. So that's just really all I have to say on that. But kudos to them. No one thought they'd be here. Vegas had a 60-1 odds of them making it to the finals, and they're in the finals. So
somebody made money on that for sure.
oh,
Jimmy obviously has had to shoulder a lot of the scoring load here. He had 23 in game 1. He had 25 in game 2. Much more efficient game 2 for Jimmy, just really picking his spots, kind of trying his best to slow down the offense. And I think that was why you were able to see them get, within 10 a few times late when they really shouldn't have been, as opposed to the 18-point blowout in game 1. Tyler's really looked like a rookie this series. Now, again, still in terms of volume shots that he's had to pick up for other folks, Bam being out of the lineup, Dragic being out of the lineup. I mean, he had 14 in game 1, 17 in game 2, but really inefficient scoring of, I think it was 6 of 18 in game 1 and then 5 of 12 in game 2. But, it's also been, as much as it's been, kind of Lakers been able to key in on Hero, and Hero's kind of hit his struggles a little bit in this series, just with so much attention now on him to score and people know it, as opposed to, being able to play off of Bam and Dragic and everything else. That it's been nice to see Kendrick Nunn back in the lineup too. I mean, he's had a really good 2 games. He had 13 in game 2. In game 1, he had 18 points on a highly efficient 8 of 11 from the floor and 2 of 4 from 3. I mean, that arguably was, in my opinion, because I still don't think Zion had played enough games. In my opinion, that was the runner-up for Rookie of the Year was Kendrick Nunn. As good as, and that's not a knock on Zion, but our reporters and our voters are so quick to just jump to, well, Zion. So there's many who still think he should have been the MVP over Ja Morant. But I mean, Kendrick Nunn had been there all year. Undrafted guy. I mean, just absolutely amazing throughout the regular season before the COVID break when the league shut down. But that's a guy that, if you asked earlier, if the Heat are going to steal a game, one, it has to be this game today. They have to catch the Lakers with their foot off the gas pedal. They got to come out early and set the tone. They're going to need a guy like Kendrick Nunn to really step up and be that scoring option. And Kelly Olynyk's going to have close to a game. Game 2 or a game 3 as he had in game 2. Obviously, Kelly hurt you so much on the defensive end, but he was 9 of 16 from the field and had 24 points. I mean, that's a kind of additional scoring you need to have, especially when we talk pre-series about how shortened the rotations for Eric Spoelstra have been. Some of these guys have not been called on. And I mean, it doesn't get any bigger than game 3 of the NBA Finals. You're in game 2 of the NBA Finals where you're getting called on and you got to produce. So it's It's boom or bust tonight for the Heat. If not, it's a foregone conclusion tomorrow for Game 4 here in a couple of days. But I'm would still like to see in terms of some morale and stuff too, and especially for that guy at the end of the bench. We all saw the speech from UD, and Twitter was a mass with UD can't be the angriest guy on the who's not or like in the bubble associated with the game and not be in the game. The players in the game have to be as mad as UD was. So, I mean, we all know UD is going to probably transition into an assistant coach after he's done here, everything else, but a high quality guy. If it's not this game, it's next game. We'll see some mop up duty likely with Haslam, but I'm excited to see that on a side note. But again, it goes to the Miami grit and grind, just like we see with Memphis and everything else. So, I mean, with that said, the cards are stacked against them. So I think the Lakers are going to take the next 2, and we'll be without basketball for a little bit. So,
one last thing on just the NBA Finals in general. You are a PR guy. It's what you do for a living.
Yep.
I don't understand why, A, the games are at 9 p.m. right now, and B, how the games are at 9 p.m. competing with other major sports. Like tonight is game 3, and it's earlier, but Sunday night football is tonight. I don't understand why they couldn't move the schedule around, especially with this bubble, that they could have played games where they had no competition ratings wise.
Yeah, I mean, they should have in years past. You would have seen from a presentation of the game aspect, you would have seen an extra day in the schedule there as opposed to playing every other day with the teams traveling and switching home court. Obviously, we don't have that right now, but it does hurt that you're going against like the Eagles matchup tonight and Sunday Night Football, which is far. I mean, there's going to be way more people watching Sunday Night Football with the bad Eagles team than through the first couple of weeks than they will the Game 3 of the NBA Finals. Which, again, in a normal year, you don't have that kind of competition, and the NBA is just feasted on. It's June, and you've got the Stanley Cup playoffs, and in baseball, a really declining baseball viewership. I mean, that's super easy and polite to say. I mean, it's been on the downturn for years, but so that's a struggle. And I somewhat get the 9:00 starts. Again, that's 6:00 especially for the West Coast team. It's 6:00 if you're out living in California on Pacific time and stuff too. But I mean, it's still. I mean, that's tough for your casual fans, which obviously you want to encompass too. When you're only playing two teams, you're trying to get the rest of the league interested, and on one end, starting it an hour earlier. I mean, I think that's really what we're talking about here is way more advantageous. You start that at, with the exception of tonight's 7:30 game, you start that at 5:00 West Coast time out there when people are getting off work and head to a bar, watch a game, and you're starting at 8:00 here. So, I mean, I'll be honest, like I kind of dozed through especially through these two games have been so far out of reach at the third and fourth quarter mark. I mean, again, it's tough on a work night throughout the week so far to really kind of stay up and watch the third and fourth quarter. I've been calling it at half basically, and just kind of listening to as I fall asleep. But you're right. I mean, it's a tough sell to the regular NBA fan, and that's kind of where you and I both are without like our core teams per se playing in this. I know we're obviously invested on a personal level and want to see LeBron succeed and continue to build his case. But no, you're exactly right. It's a tough sell from a marketing standpoint with the NBA, but I think going in they were pretty animate that we're going to play every other day. We're going to play every other day, have a game, and they were just at the onset. They were worried if they'd even make it this far with COVID and how many positive tests they'd have in the bubble. But I mean, that also speaks to the success of the bubble and what Adam Silver's really done to get them to a position where you can say, hey, like you can't stretch out the schedule a little bit more for viewership and bring in the casual fan. It's almost a curse of the blessing of not having positive tests. And I mean, imagine if on the heels of Cam Newton, quarterback of New England, testing positive. I mean, they had to postpone the game. Thankfully for New England, they did. But players on multiple sides doing it just based on that. I mean, imagine if we're talking Game 3 of the NBA Finals and we've already had a number of tests and like LeBron popped tonight. I mean, that could easily swing a series. So, I mean, it speaks to what Adam Silver's done, but obviously viewership's kind of hurting a little bit with some of those start times. And then again on, Sunday night too, this would have been, in my eyes, a great game to potentially on a Sunday night start at the 9:00 if you're going to do that. And then weeknights, you gotta take that back to an 8:00. On the one last note on the NBA, right after we finished the podcast earlier in the week, leading into game 1 of the finals, Doc Rivers and the Clippers separated.
Yes.
So Doc is out in LA after that very tumultuous ending with the Clippers as assembled with the Paul George and Kawhi year one, and he's out. And then within 36 hours, I don't want to say I was Babe Ruth calling my shot here, but I texted in the group chat that, I said, keep an eye out on Philly, and Philly got to them before Indiana did, or got to Doc before Indiana did. And I'm trying to remember where some of the other openings are. I know some have been filled, but he's now going to be the head coach of the 76ers, tasked with trying to get the Simmons and Embiid experiment to stay on track and get them to that next level where obviously Brett Brown really struggled. What are your thoughts on the hiring, the separation of the Clippers and Doc, and moving in a different direction? I mean, I don't know who's on the Clippers' radar of now to replace him. So
With him getting fired, I just felt like it was the typical someone's got to go after that 3-1 debacle. You can't just someone had to take the hit for everybody, and unfortunately, it was him. Him getting a job in that quick a fashion, I was shocked. You did call, watch out for Philly. I thought potentially they were going to try and go more offense with a Mike D'Antoni, but they went more, I guess, accomplished in Doc Rivers, and I was just like, okay, well, I thought he could have potentially. There was still Houston, but that would have been, and then there was Indiana. So him going to Philly to try and, like you said, get Joel and Ben to the next level will be interesting. He's back in the Eastern Conference. He's back in the Atlantic Division, the same division he was with when he was a coach for Boston. I don't know if he's going to be the right guy for that job, and so wait and see. And in regards to the Clippers, I think they're probably going to go Ty Lue, if anything, if Ty Lue doesn't get snatched up by the Rockets, because I think he's a potential for the Rockets as well. Oh, and
or Indiana.
Or Indiana. If I do remember, the Thunder still don't have a coach yet, right? Because
That's correct.
They let
Donovan
go, and he already got signed to Chicago.
Yeah. I can't remember. I might have seen Ty Lue, or at least the Pacers were trying to pursue an interview with Ty Lue at some point. But again, Mike D'Antoni's got to land somewhere. I think originally before Doc became available, we both kind of thought, maybe Philly for that one there in terms of, bringing an offensive side of the ball mind there, and obviously his connections with the former leadership with Philadelphia with Team USA. Mike's got to land somewhere. I don't foresee him going to, an OKC, and just kind of, I think again, they really outperformed this year. If I'm the Clippers and I'm looking at the landscape, and if, to me, it's Ty Lue or it's going to be Mike D'Antoni. Just depends what direction they want to go to. Now, in terms of managing personalities, Ty Lue's got to be the guy. And I think I assume that's the way you're leading. I think that's the way it's got to be. But hey, I just want to touch base on Doc real quick. So the Doc tenure in LA really started back in, what would that have been? 2014? Does that sound about right?
Yeah. Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan, Lob City era.
So I don't know if at all for you, but for me, I think historically, the NBA, in my opinion, of all the pro sports franchises, has really, really outperformed every other league when it comes to dialogue, when it comes to culture, when it comes to race relations. Amongst players, amongst organizations, and bringing forth some of the great issues that, haven't had a light cast on them that certainly need to be. And when I think back to the inception of it, we had an awful Donald Sterling situation that, just went on for so long. Everybody knew, reporters knew, NBA personnel knew, how awful he was and how awful he ran, not just his team, but his own businesses on the side, and the kind of opportunities that he was withholding from historically disadvantaged groups of people. And Doc was the steady hand to come into that situation. I remember that Adam Silver press conference. I know you do too, where he came in and they basically, took the team from him, did the forced sell after that tape came out. And I think, we joke about Doc Rivers as a coach blowing 3-1 leads in 3 different decades, but, Doc really is kind of the inception of this new movement within basketball, within society, within culture to highlight social issues and to call for courage and empower players to speak their mind and use their platform. Doc has been that guy. I know he'll bring that to whatever his next team is, but when the great archivers of basketball, journalists, whoever, go through and are documenting, when they talk about the I think it was the 78 NBA ABA merger as a touch point. I hope when they're looking at how basketball has evolved and how it's evolved through society and culture, and they're looking at the Bill Russells and the work and the body of work he's done and continues to do in terms of rights and in terms of fighting injustice, I hope that they look at Doc Rivers in that same light.
Agreed. It's going to be unfortunate with him just because of the first thing that people are going to think about now is him blowing 3-1 leads in 3 different decades. And then they're going to rag on him for that and underperforming with talented teams before they get to that part of everything that you just did. It's just because that's the way society and journalists and hot take analysts are. They're going to talk about the negative first, then they'll work their way down to the good and positive that he's done in the world. And hopefully with Philadelphia, I would say now they're sealing with him. They at least got to potentially make a conference finals, at least for their first year to be successful and for him not to get ragged on.
Yeah, I mean, I think, he's got his work stacked up against him. They've got to figure out how to make Embiid more of a centralized or a central part of the offense, especially in the paint. They can't be tucking him out in the corners. I mean, believe me, Joel is very capable, and that needs to be part of your system for hey, Joel just box out, grab a rebound, the offense pushed up, and then he's the lingering 5 walking up the court that everybody forgot about who's going to pop that 3 at the top of the arc. Now, that's part of it, but that can't be your offense, is just letting Joel shoot 4, 5, 6 times a game from 3, when he's shooting at a 30-some% clip. That guy is your best center in the league. I know Adebayo's had a really good run here, but you got to work with him. He's still got to continue to get his body ready. He's got to continue to get his mind ready in terms of bringing it every night and pacing himself throughout the year. But Doc's got to have his hands cut out with that. Obviously, Ben's injury really, really hurt in terms of their bubble run and getting bounced pretty quick. They've got to continue to find and add shooters to their wings. But Doc's a good locker room guy. Again, I hope he brings some of that same mentality, bring some of that same mentality and some of that perspective and locker room culture that he had with the Clippers and he had with Boston that gelled all those guys quick. You're exactly right. Doc has really been blessed with a lot of really good, well-developed players to just be kind of handed the keys to. And this is, another instance of that with 2 guys, but he's got his work cut out for him. But I really think the Sixers will make a move next year with him at the head as opposed to Brett Brown.
Hopefully. You said something about Embiid. Did you say that he was the best center or potentially the best center?
Potentially. There's on any given night, again in AD will tell you he's a power forward, not a center. But Embiid arguably is, in my opinion. I think there's a couple other cases to be made there in some other respects, but he's a guy that's has struggled a little bit with conditioning, and then from a strategy standpoint, Brett Brown almost valued opening up the floor for Ben Simmons to drive because he can't shoot, and knowing that Embiid can shoot a little bit from 16, 18-foot jumpers out to the 3-point line, but you can't stick a guy with that kind of talent and that kind of size and unguardable acumen that far away from the basket. So I expect that to flip a little bit. Ben's going to have to figure out the jumper somewhat. But those are some personal things. But I think Doc's going to just fundamentally change how they run things in Philadelphia, and I expect him to make a jump this year and potentially take advantage of an East again that's going to have the Bucks with some questions around Giannis. Boston's here scratching their head too. After what the Heat just laid on them, but I really like the move for Philadelphia, and it just speaks to who Doc is again, as we just discussed, as a person, as a coach, as a well-respected locker room guy to not even be on the job market for 2 days.
Right. I guess with the Embiid thing, because we talked about this on one of our earlier ones, I can't he has the potential to be the best center in the league, but since he didn't get to play obviously that much in the bubble, I can't put him above Joker. Not yet at this point in time, after what I saw Joker do in the bubble.
Absolutely. I mean, Joker is the best guy. I mean, like I said, there's some other cases out there. Yeah, Joker is the guy now, but in terms of tools, it's just we're just waiting for Embiid to put it all together.
Yep.
I mean, and that also says how good Embiid is, that he's in that conversation. I mean, now again, Joker is the guy. Adebayo's really made a push this bubble, as well as Embiid. But again, that says a whole lot about Embiid, that he's somewhat in that conversation, and he is in that conversation without having it all put together. I mean, it's going to be scary if and when he can put all those things together. I mean, from a scoring aspect, entirely, he is the most gifted offensive center in the NBA when it comes to putting the ball in the basket. Jokic obviously is the player you take hands down because of his passing ability too. He does so much more than just fill it up, and Jokic can do that. But I mean, Embiid is a Shaq-like monster, still kind of walking around with baby deer legs or what have you, trying to make his way. And he's had some cards stacked against him with that Brett Brown offense and a little bit of the injury bug and personal fitness. But man, when that guy gets it all put together, look out. It's going to be scary.
There's one more thing I just want to talk about real quick, and it's in regards to coaching. And this man's name's always brought up, but he's never gotten...
Please tell me you're going where I think you're going.
He's never gotten a second chance in the lead after, he used to have the Warriors at 50-32. Mark Jackson.
I thought you were going to go on the other side of the booth and say JVG, baby.
I think he's done. I think he's done. I mean, he was doing it for a minute, but with Mark, though, he was leading the Warriors to 50-32, and then finally when the Warriors got rid of him, they won the title the next year with Steve Kerr, and he's never gotten an interview since then. I personally don't know if he has a black plague around him or black whatever, shadow, whatever. I just don't understand why he's not getting interviews. I just don't get it. I mean, he seemed like a good coach in Golden State, and all these openings are going places. I'm like, why didn't Mark Jackson get an interview? So what do you think about, well, now you're bringing up the booth, so we can talk about the booth too, but what about those two that I just don't think just accepting them? I feel like Mark wants to coach, but what do you think about Mark specifically?
Yeah, I mean, there were some rumors in there, and I apologize. I'm typing on the keyboard again. Justin, our producer, is gonna get on me about that. But yeah, I mean, so Mark, there were some rumblings about, kind of almost not being the antithesis of a Doc Rivers in terms of locker room personality. Again, successful year, and Kerr comes in, and that's a tough pill to swallow, to see the Warriors' success, and obviously the Warriors are going to be right back at it next year once they get their two main dogs back, in addition to whatever they decide with the number one pick or Andrew Wiggins, if they're going to package that for someone else, who knows? But that's got to be a tough personal, and Mark's handled that with grace. I mean, you don't hear anything about Mark saying. I mean, that on alone should get you at least an interview. But I mean, there's been some rumblings that Mark maybe wasn't the best locker room guy, that he would say one thing and then he would do another. I mean, that was kind of and I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, if you've picked up on that, or that's things you've heard in the past. I mean, the example I had read about a lot was, and I don't know the validity of this, but Mark would be kind of a force when it comes to praying before games and embodying some of the religious aspects of growing together, the iron sharpens iron thing. And then, like, he maybe didn't display such morals in the wee hours in the morning, certain places, just trying to, you alluded to being a PR guy earlier, so just trying to paint it poetically. So I think a lot of players saw through that facade and what have you. But I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, we had a star 6-man point guard just go to Magic City if you're going to try to hold people accountable by the same thing, and like nobody bats an eye. So yeah, I mean the interview piece, I don't know. And I mean, unless behind the scenes he's pushing against it, but I think he does want to coach. I think that's got to get him an interview someplace. I mean, honestly, if I'm Mark Jackson or looking for a job, and I'm somebody like Oklahoma City, I mean that's a spot where, instead of taking Joe Schmo, who's been an assistant 12 years, and you're hoping that he's the next up and coming guy, I mean, stick him there with SGA to help continue to develop him as a point guard. I think Chris Paul's probably going to be on the move somewhere this summer. Somebody's either going to overpay, somebody is going to overpay for that contract, but I do somehow would like to see him make it to the Bucks, or, I can see the Knicks come in and really overpay and do some swapping of picks and talent for CP3. But, that's a perfect spot I'd see from Mark. But I hope behind the scenes, maybe we're just not hearing about it. I hope he's getting interviews somewhere. Again, we can't hold everybody to this gold standard and on half truths and half conversations. I mean, the dude, yeah, he went 50-32 with young Clay and young Draymond, and I don't know if that was a Richard Jefferson year or not. I know he coached RJ at Golden State too, but I mean,
Steph was there too. Those were he had them during the years where they were always having. Steph had the ankle injuries.
Yeah.
So it's we're just gonna have to see. I feel like he wants to coach again, and I have heard the same things you have heard about the locker room stuff and the behind the scenes maybe not being who he says he is, but I feel like that shouldn't be enough to not get another chance in the league if he wasn't disrespectful to players or broke any rules. I feel like
you're right. There's got to be something. I mean, I'd like to think that, again, we just praised the NBA for what they've done on a social level, a social equity level, a race level, what have you. I mean, in my opinion, that's not a pretty look to blackball a guy, who's in his own right, in his own league. There's still a minority issue when it comes to presenting opportunities for head coaches. I mean, those aren't good optics. And Mark's very, very capable. I wonder if there is something more to it that we just don't know, that's never got out, or in 10 years from now, you and I are both going to read the same article in Sports Illustrated and be like, that's why. I mean, it could be, but you and I both like to look at things with rose-colored lenses on, and I'd like to think that somehow, some way, that just maybe the right opportunity hasn't popped up. But I mean, especially with some of those openings now. I mean, heck, look at Indiana right now, where he starred, playing with Reggie Miller, played for many, many years. That's slugged in those series against the Knicks and Jeff Van Gundy. When he was the coach there. I mean, that would be another great spot for him too. So I hope we start to hear some of that. I hope he actually gets opportunities to interview. And then with a kind of tumultuous offseason, that's a steady hand who's been a coach before, as opposed to the next top assistant for maybe not the Lakers, because Jason Kidd and those guys have been around, but the next top assistant on a Denver or on a Milwaukee behind Budenholzer, or something that you've never heard of, giving that guy a shot for the first time. If there's ever time they need a steady hand, it's during a pandemic and a shortened season, and one that keeps getting bumped back closer to a Christmas or after Christmas start. So I hope he gets the opportunity. I mean, unless there's something just absolutely egregious we're missing here, which you did say is a possibility. I mean, you're not wrong, but I think there's some room to go, and I think there's some gas left in the tank for Mark Jackson as a coach in this league.
Well, game 3 is about to start in
we got you going.
Yeah, a couple of minutes. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we sign out for the day?
Once again, just echoing what we talked about last time. I want to thank folks for listening to us yap about basketball. We went way longer than I think we expected for this recording. So sorry, Justin, on the unexpected editing duties here, but that's why you're the man. That's why you're good at what you do. But Lakers Heat game 3 here, starting in about 5 minutes or so. Let's see if the Heat can steal one, or if we're on our way to a Lakers sweep, a fourth title for LeBron, and the first for Anthony Davis, and truly the NBA offseason in a time where normally annually we'd have the NBA regular season start here in a couple weeks, and preseason basketball currently. So let's see if the Lakers can finish it out, and we'll be back to recap after the finals is over. But we're going to take a break probably a little bit in between, so I'm sure there'll be more coaching movement, and that way we'll have a little bit more off-season content to preview. So
Right. And yep.
Martin, thanks for having me on.
Oh, no problem, man. Thanks for always coming on and giving some hoop knowledge to our loyal fans. As I've already said, thank you to everyone who listens. We probably won't be back for a little bit unless the crazy happens and this goes to game 7, which we both don't see happening. But if it does, we will have a game 7 preview podcast just for you guys. Just want to say thank you again. Once again, thank you for listening to the L7C podcast, and we'll be talking to you guys soon. Take care. Thank you for listening to this episode of the L7C podcast. Be sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe to the channel. Follow us on all social media platforms, and we'll be talking to you guys soon. Take care.